Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that's quietly changing the game for businesses and really all of us, social scoring. We're basing this explainer on a new analysis from the technology research firm Virtualization Options LLC, which was put together specifically to help executives like you get a handle on this whole landscape. So just imagine for a second. What if everything you did, paying your bills, the stuff you post online, even how you drive, got boiled down into a single number? A score that could literally decide if you get a loan, a new job, or even a place to live. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, it's not. It's the very real world of social scoring. All right, first things first, we're going to break down what social scoring actually is and take a quick look at where this whole idea came from. So at its heart, social scoring is basically any system that uses data, usually crunched by an algorithm, to evaluate people. But this score isn't just some random number. No, it's a key that can either unlock or lock the doors to some of the biggest opportunities in your life. You know, this idea of scoring people isn't exactly new. For ages, we just relied on good old-fashioned reputation. Then, back in the 18th century, credit bureaus started popping up, which eventually led to the standardized credit scores we all know. The real difference, the game changer, is the technology today. The incredible scale, the speed, and just the sheer amount of data being used is on a whole other level. So let's talk about how this is all playing out in the US right now. Because beyond that one score pretty much everyone knows, there's a whole bunch of invisible numbers that are already making a huge impact on our lives. We have to start here, right? With your FICO score or whatever version you have. It's the original, the one we all get. It's the most widely understood form of social scoring in America, and it's basically the blueprint for everything else. But that blueprint, it's being copied and pasted into other areas of our lives. Take housing, for example. Landlords and big property management companies are now using these specialized tenant scores to decide if you're going to be a good renter. And, you know, we're talking about way more than just a simple credit check here. As you can see, these scores are digging into your rental payment history, any eviction records, and even your criminal history to decide who gets the keys and who doesn't. And it doesn't stop at your front door. It also hits your wallet when it comes to insurance. Insurers use these scores to predict how likely you are to file a claim, and that has a direct effect on how high your premiums are. Now, some of these factors are pretty obvious, like your driving record, but notice credit history is in there too. Why? Well, insurers found a link between lower credit scores and a higher chance of filing a claim. And here's what's absolutely crucial for business leaders to get. These formulas are often proprietary black boxes. It's almost impossible for a consumer to figure out exactly how their score was calculated. And this one might be the most important of all. These scores are now acting as gatekeepers for jobs. More and more, companies are using automated systems to screen candidates before a human being ever even sees their resume. Yeah, this is where scoring goes into totally new territory. We're talking about algorithms that analyze your social media, your online reputation, even how you did on some personality test, all to predict if you'd be a good fit for a job. Your entire digital life is basically becoming part of your resume, whether you like it or not. Okay, so we've seen just how pervasive scoring has become. And that naturally leads to some really big, important questions about the risks. I mean, what happens when these algorithms get it wrong? This is the question a lot of people jump to. You know, there's this idea that if you take human emotion out of the equation, the decision has to be fair. But the data? Well, it tells a much, much more complicated story. See, bias can creep into these systems from all sorts of places. According to the report, if the historical data you use to train an algorithm is already reflecting old societal biases, the machine is just going to learn those biases and then automate them. On top of that, you can have flaws in the design or just a lack of diversity on the teams building these things, and that's a huge operational risk for any company using these tools. So you end up with this really two-sided debate. On the one hand, proponents will argue that these systems make things more efficient. They can even encourage good behavior. But on the other hand, critics are sounding the alarm about mass surveillance, unfair discrimination, and just a total erosion of our privacy. Both sides have some really valid points. One of the single biggest issues for executives and for regulators is what people call the black box problem. The algorithms are often top secret, there's very little oversight, the laws haven't caught up with the tech, and it is incredibly hard for you as an individual to find out why you got a certain score, let alone try to fight it. All right, let's zoom out for a minute. The US is not the only place struggling with this. When you look at how other major global players are handling this, you see two very, very different philosophies about technology, the government, and the individual. On one end of the spectrum, you've got China's state-run social credit system. It's this massive, comprehensive system designed specifically to shape how people behave using rewards and punishments. Then, on the complete other end, you have Europe's GDPR approach, which puts individual data privacy first and heavily restricts how personal data can even be used for scoring. Right now, the US is kind of stuck somewhere in the middle. So, with all these risks and these different global models, what is the path forward for the United States? How do we find that balance between pushing innovation and still protecting people's fundamental rights? The report from Virtualization Options LLC actually lays out a pretty clear four-step framework to think about. Step 1, demand more transparency, things like auditing the algorithms. Step 2, give people clear rights and control over their own data. 3, create rules to make sure these systems don't discriminate. And 4, guarantee people a real process to dispute a score they think is unfair. Really, when you look at all these proposed reforms, they all boil down to one core principle: empowerment. The person who's being scored has to have the power to understand, to access, and to challenge the very systems that have so much say over their future. And that leaves us with this final critical question. As these scoring systems become more and more powerful, who's on the hook for making sure they're fair? Is it the companies that build them? Government regulators? Or is it all of us, the executives and individuals who use and live under these systems? Figuring that out might just be one of the most important challenges we face. Thanks for joining this explainer.